So we move to the second part of the evening, where 4 of the projects, whom I just mentioned, including forgetting one and then remembering it, these projects will be presented to you in their own ways. There's no set format. They've chosen to tell you a story or tell you an experience or show you through their place. So I think from that point of view, I'm realizing we might have to wait. So I'm still continuing to introduce what's going to happen, but we have invited respondents, keeping sort of the projects in mind, but the idea is that they will also speak with other projects, looking at the common themes and discussing the stories further. Hopefully, Urvashi's talk and a lot of things that she said has obviously laid a context for us, and we'll be able to continue moving over these questions and talk through the presentations. With this, we'll move on to the 4 presentations. I'm not at all going to bore you all, and I'll hand over the presentations to Zannatun, from that to Srinidhi, to Tonisha, and Soni. So they will just take on from one to the other. You can self-introduce as you like, or if you don't want to, whichever works for you. And once again, many thanks to Mr. Om Prakash, Ms. Shelja BS, and Nupur Basu, who is joining us online as respondents for this session. After the 15-minute presentations are done, which will take up to an hour, we'll all open it up into a conversation across screens and across spaces. Over to you, Kenneth.
Okay, thank you everyone. This is my project in Constructing Personal Archive 2022. So this is about the journey of Taiba Begum Lipi and Mahbubur Rahman during their academic period from 1986 to 1999. This is not about the academic journey only. This is also about their initiatives and their art practice and their collective report, how these 2 artists developed themselves, and I can found them in every significant journey in Bangladesh, like Britto Arts Trust, the contemporary art practice, the visual celebration in the urban area of Bangladesh, like Mongol Shobha Jatra. So they are involved in every perspective. So that's why I feel interested, and also they also welcome me to write about their biography for Bangladesh Shilpakala Academy. So here is the screenshot, the Taiba Begum Lipi Bangla screenshot. So the Begum Lipi is my transcription and Mahbubur Rahman's is his text. I just edited this part. So these 2 texts are developed by me and submitted to Bangladesh Shilpakala Academy. And this project, Kauchani and Mustari, is also based on this text, and I created the information on the Google site from this text, and also some conversation with them during my working period in Studio Mahbub Lipi in 2023. So why I think that I should preserve the informations and stories about them, because they are initiatives, their contemporary art practice from the 90s, and their collective journey, and the discipline they are introduced in Bangladesh, which is beyond the academic practice in the fine arts faculties in Bangladesh. There are 4, now this is 6 or 7 institute in Bangladesh, but most of the art practice is introduced either by Britto Arts Trust or started by Taiba Lipi or Mahbubur Rahman. So I inspired all these points. So that's why I started to finding the information, and mostly when I prepared this text for Lipi and edited the text for Mahbub, I just got the information. So when I started working in the studio and also started working in CPA workshop from September 2022, I just calculate the information and match the visual materials, mostly the photographs, with the information. So this photograph is for the catalog cover of their South Asian traveling exhibition in 1994. And this photograph is from the site-specific work of 1994, Bandurban Lama. And this is Taiba Lipi's photo, but there is another first performance art of Mahbub Rahman is happened here in 1994. So they have a great collective journey in Bangladesh. I think one of the first non-profit art collective in Bangladesh, and still it's ongoing. The age is already 2021 now. So this is the Britto Arts Trust members and trustees here together. This photo is the latest photo in 2022. So this journey is also ongoing, including their personal artists' life, including their collective journey is also ongoing. So what is the my kind of project here? So mostly focusing on the visual material collection and matching my oral information with the visual material. And I am focusing on the digital and portable easy access space because sometimes we are get stuck in between the material transformation from here to there, transfer here to there, and sometimes it's like the excess of the material. Sometimes it's create complex, I think. So I focus on the digital space for my point of view. And there is some. This is my photo from their studio when I started working in 2023. So this is my site with what is at display now in the CPA workshop. And what is my another point of view that this is the Jainal Abidin collection museum in Mymensingh, Bangladesh. So we can see here the wall. So when government also focused on the artists collection, so they need to focus on multiple things like the preservation of the artwork, the preservation of the place. Everything is need to on the pressure if the government think. So what I can do in easily, then I can do I can preserve stories. So what about the stories? If someone is written about their artwork, someone is written about their criticism or something like that, I'm focusing on their stories. So there is another point of view from my side is that there is a museum, which is a private collection place. So they are focusing on artworks and objects related to the artist Shafiuddin Ahmed. So I'm also not focusing on this kind of things like that. Objects are also has a story. So I need the stories about the artist, not about the objects and the artworks. So that's why I have a display here that the materials is all about the text, the persons or the events related to Lipi Mahbub or the photos about them. So I avoid here to present any catalog or any artwork. What people will distract with this thing. So I want to focus on the stories, and this is the display place now. And how I started my journey with this Mahbub's type. So 2019 was my introduction phase because this time I prepared the text, and 2021 this time I started Britto Arts Trust archive development work with the workshop of curating for culture, and this time I introduced with the impact of this organization. And 2023 I started the my journey in Lip Studio Mahbub Lipi, and all these three things are happening this journey. And I also started my workshop this time. So this is the current situation of Britto. So this is all the contemporary art history preservation in Britto space. So I think this is strongly connected with Lipi Mahbub's journey, contemporary art in Bangladesh, collective journey in Bangladesh, non-profit art organization journey in Bangladesh. All these things are connected in a similar way. So this is my first kind of practice. What is the location now? And then I am starting the next thing. And you can see here the display, the material, physical material, and my Google site. And this is another part of that people make people interest about the journeys and stories, and not the focusing on these artworks in they are practicing now. So this is about my presentation, and thank you, Ishita. So, guide me many time, and thank you, Lipiapa, for present here virtually, and thank you everyone to support me from this. Thank you. Thank you.
The last time I did such a presentation was in college, so I'm not prepared with the presentation. I have screenshots from my Instagram and WhatsApp. So I'll just start with that one screenshot and then I'll have a slideshow.
You might want to sit there
Sit.
because that's the mic.
Oh, that's the mic.
This will also works.
Yeah, then I can use that. Then he can help me. That is what?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope it's audible, that's but it should be.
Yeah. So I kind of want to walk all of you through, not just the archive that I worked on, but in a way it's become inception because I want to walk you through curating personal archives, which is like Ishika has made me do like it's the fourth exhibition or something. And the story in which it developed is kind of fascinating. So for me, I kind of want to share with you that also. Like, do you see the inception there? You see what that is? Can you guess the place? It's the same place. That's the same screen. And I don't know if you can spot me. Can you spot me?
Are you a thumbnail?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not clicking the photo.
On the right.
Huh?
The right of
You don't count it.
Oh, I didn't know.
See,
I
we
didn't-
now have a cheat sheet, so you're definitely the person.
Yeah, he also does it. Anyway,
Yeah, I did.
yeah, that's the person on the right. Do you see something in front of me though? The trunk. So that's the trunk, right? Because some of you have read the introduction. So thank you for that. And the whole thing is about the trunk, right? So I still remember I had no clue what personal archives was. I knew that my grandfather was in the trunk. I know it properly. I barely have any memories. I just know that there is something of him in the attic. One day I go there. There is the transit there. All of your archivists, don't kill me now. I couldn't open it. I have ADHD. I took a hammer. I break it open. And I found this huge treasure trove of things inside there. But I wasn't exactly sure what I'm going to do with all of this. It's fascinating stories, electricity bills, pension schemes, letters that told me a lot of things. You know, when I was growing up, one of these toxic grandparents nicknamed me this thing called Kotsar. Kotsar in Kannada is like a kanji. It's like a oats porridge that only poor people eat. And I was like, why would you call a kid such a And when I went through those letters, I clearly see he was somebody who ran away from home. Nobody was helping him. And then he writes to my grandfather was help. And I'm not sure my grandfather helped him in the 1800s. And that intergenerational trauma comes from this young grandkid of my grandfather. So even though I could not forgive him, at least I got the context of what happened. So Ishika announced this, I was like, okay, I'll walk in and then I come with the trunk. I was very scared to get it because the trunk is all of my grandfather. Very carefully, I get in this cab, I come here, I'm very stressfully out of place. I'm just sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And 5 months later, I'm talking. Thank you to Ishita to take me through such a beautiful journey of curating this archive in such a personal way for me. Because while I was doing this grandfather stuff, I kind of realized that after my first workshop, I was like, grandfather is dead and gone. I am finding clues with this. But my granny, I was in premature grief. I knew that she may pass away, but then she's with me. He is with me. And I can celebrate life with her while she's there as a living archive. So I started recording all of her recipes. My mom helped me with some fantastic stories she'll tell later in the session. Crazy stuff. Like, I can't believe because I knew she was born with it. And she's had 2 strokes and she's trying to recover from it. And then I'm like, what do I do with her old history, I can barely hear her. Somehow my mom has figured a way to hear her and talk to me, and she translated my very complicated request, which was, do you remember the national anthem you used to sing in your school? And I was hoping she'll sing the usual, God Save the King. So, because I was reading the British thing, and instead she sings another song, which is Kari Shri Gauri. Kari Shri Gauri was the Mysore anthem. And she remembered it, and she had gone to school only till 8th grade. And this was a story of almost 2 years earlier, and she still remembered the song and sung it. So that's how I started archiving her journey. And then there's the green video, you check it out, and then I ransacked the green video. Now that she's settled, I can't go ransack it. And I was like, Aji, oh, more Kali. And then I went, opened it, and lo and behold, far more beautiful things than my grandfather, who was a very difficult person. And there's a pop-up there that I wanted to use. I'll open it for you later. It's a fascinating story of how one day she's like, lots of friends, they've all come up, they all want to eat, feed me, feed all of us. And my comes and sits there. And my grandmother tells, all these are big authors, people, and he was well known in the author circle and so on, and supposed to feed them. She goes into these plates, and he's like, there's the food. And she's like, where are your groceries? So that amount of that feminist resistance in that small little kitchen revolution of telling, where's the groceries, is undocumented. His novels are there in my books. So I'm like, how do I now look at these many different tensions? And then both my mom and my granny start telling stories about how Bangalore evolved as they evolved. So when we look at Bangalore as the IT capital today, we are not looking at some of these really fascinating history. This is just a trailer because I have 5 minutes left. But please come to my workshop tomorrow at 2:30 to do this treasure hunt. Small class. We can run the thing. So this is my grandmother's photos. While she came out of it, she came out of the second stroke, comes out with us, and here she is heading out. Now she's going through all of these things. She's going through her second stroke. It's been very difficult for her in the hospital, but then she makes it with her STEM archive to our second show, which happened, first show that happened at metro station, and comes and inaugurates it herself, her own archive of this with CPA. So first I was sitting like this scared person with that box, and then my granny is coming and inaugurating her own archive, documenting the STEM and science history of Bangalore. Because what you see there, where she's doing that little tailoring machine, is 80 years old, is almost 60 years old, and is something that she is used to draw these fantastic chattis. I'm going to show you the chatti. I'm not sure I got it. You can come to the archive. But yeah, she's drawn the chattis there. Those children have gone on to do study in IITs. I have found it as extra fun. My father worked at HMT. His grandfather worked at IIT. His father, my mom, grandmother's father was an engineer with the Maharashtra. And her designs of the chatti are better than any CAD drawing. The kind of handiwork that she has done with her embroidery, kind of handiwork that she has done with her sewing machine that got with a chipped fund of, I think, 2 or 3 rupees a month, is something that isn't documented when we look at Bangalore's IT history and how so much of unrecognized, unpaid labor went into creating us proud, overpaid, overvalued. And I think a lot of that is underdocumented. And also what's underdocumented is the caste class privilege that goes with it. The fact that they could live in a state, and this is another thing that I learned, that you should be very careful and wear gloves and handle your archives. But are you okay with this? All okay with what I'm doing? Is your heart melting? Who wants to say salvage this? Does anyone want to really salvage this? No one cares. Gives a ram about this. Okay.
It's there.
Okay. Failed. Okay. How would you salvage this? What would you want to do with it? And what do you think that is? While we are at it, I have another beautiful ancient.
It's going to be there.
I just wanted a shop. I think these are for the workshop. These are beautiful replicas created by Rohit. So these are not real archives that I'm spoiling. I just wanted to see the shop. How much time? 5. Okay. So I'm not able to present this because I wanted my beautiful grandma's photos. It's circulating.
Yes.
Did you get to see that Instagram page ka post of Unity for Culture where she came and she inaugurated? That was another beautiful moment because it kind of allowed the person to archive themselves with their agency, with what they wanted in their story. My mom and my grandma's story, first show when you were there, so many of those things I had gone and scratched. And she was like, why did you scratch all this? And I'm like, these are bits they told me I should not be telling. And that's their agency. And today also we were discussing, I think in one of your workshops about, earlier even Rishi was telling about it, that agency just goes away. And the moment it goes to somebody else. And here they had that agency to document what they wanted, what stories of which in what format would be told. And here there's a little bit of interesting thing. So how many of you, in the building plan, you can see this word called conservancy. How many of you know what's a conservancy? 2 people. Oh, okay. Most of you don't know what's a conservancy. What do you think is a conservancy? Any guesses? You can take your phones out, Google for conservancy. Go ahead, take your phones out, check what conservancy is. And we have an ecologist sitting here. That's a clue of what conservancy is. What came up? The body concerns preservation of natural resources and wildlife. My granny is the wildlife animal. I don't know what they're conserving there in those houses. Right? So actually, if you Google Bangalore and conservancy, you Google the 2 terms together, it turns out that conservancy is the lane in which Dalits who were doing manual scavenging had to walk and collect your so-called night soil, while you could just live in your home in the front, while the conservancy lay down at your back. And these 2 you only find in 2 localities in Bangalore, Malleshwaram and Basunduri in Chamrajpet areas, together give you the famed market. And if you look at who all lived here as engineers, you had people like Vishweshwaraya build and live it. You had Karpura Srinivasa, I think, who founded Chamrajpet live in it. You had my grandfather live in it, Patnap Rao. You had Ravindra Rao, who was the surgeon to the Mysore Maharaja. It is really common that you hear in all these. The Brahmins, right? So we have a locality full of Brahmins, to the point that Vishweshwaraya, when he was asked that we would bring a non-Brahmin reservation for engineering and other streams to the Mysore Maharaja. Sorry, Mysore Maharaja said that he's going to do it. Vishweshwaraya, the most famed engineer, he resigned, telling I should not subscribe to the. And in that sense, when I look at these kind of gentrified localities from which I came and look at the STEM history of all of your popular medical colleges, institutions, are all surrounding the areas that have constraints. Famed offices, famed medical colleges, famed institutions of science, whose science is it? And today when we see deaths of students in IITs, they go on in go in when you hear about the almost an institutional death of somebody like Russian on whose hands we go. In terms of documenting the triumph of an IT capital like Bangalore, how many people have got excluded? Right outside these planned suburbs of the checkbox colony of Chamrajpet, you have Padepete, Kabbanpete, Karatpete, so many pete areas known for its rich history. SP Road, there's a very good researcher called Vishal, who researches on how SP Road's Dalit history and Bahujan history has never been documented in the science history. Today, all of us makers, it's the meta or Tipu Sultan who invented, whose palace is also in Chamrajpet, who did phenomenal work with engineering. So how much of Bangalore's IT history is erasure how much of it is appropriation, how much of it is marginalization of women, Bahushan people is something that the archive looks at from a very personal point of view of all of my own family history and privilege and marginalization of women in the family and so on. So that is what the archive is about. I'll lastly leave you with this. This is my great grandmother. You can see later at the archive that she is shaven-headed. She was not having access to a lot of freedom, and of course was marginalized as a widow. While at the same time, she also held the house and also would have a pot hanging on her so that she can clean the roads while she walked, so that any shadow of an oppressed person is not affect her. So, how much of these, both oppressed and is oppressive, how much of that are we looking into our own ancestry and heritage as we celebrate our ancestors and beautifully have very beautiful times, while also questioning where we come from and what our roots are and how to navigate through all of those things.
Thank you.
So before I started working with curating for culture, I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I have been working on the Sundarbans area for some time. For those of you who are not aware, this is a delta that opens into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganga and Brahmaputra rivers go through the delta to create these tiny islands. And of course, it's one of the UNESCO biosphere reserves. Everyone knows about the rich biodiversity, but also extremely endangered biodiversity of that space. What often gets missed out in conversations is also that it's a highly populated space of some of the most vulnerable communities, not just in Bengal, but in India, and vulnerable along multiple axes, not just economic vulnerability. Since it is such an unorganized space, you have refugee migrant communities, local tribal communities of living there for generations, and with climate violence, natural disasters like Amphan happening practically annually now, things have only been getting harder. Within mainstream representations, including representations in Kolkata, which is barely a couple hours away, very little visibility is shown about the local cultures or the local students, right? And that reflects in scientific technical activities. So I have been working on this for the last few years. I have some publications if you're interested. When the project started, I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I wanted to look at local knowledge systems, local stories, gossips, rumors, all those informal or fuzzy or private bits of knowledge that don't make it to formal archives or formal mainstream spaces like Kolkata. So one of the first things that I told and made friends in curating for culture was a ghost story about the Sundarbans. And that really helped things along. And I'm looking at Aparna when I'm saying this. So, because it's important to look at the ways in which locally something is talked about. My interest is in identity and spaces. I believe that the way in which a space is imagined, beyond its physical features or physical reality, has a lot to do with the kind of cultural attitudes through with the filters of which we look at that space. When it comes to identity, I talk about intersectionality. You can't just purely think of gender or caste or sexuality in isolation. When we talk about a space like Sundarbans, which is extremely vulnerable, what does it mean to have a queer feminist narrative of that space? What are we doing in terms of representation or identity studies there? Also, a big problem that comes with identity studies is there's a lot of even when we are trying to solve a problem or address a violence that exists, there is a tendency to treat people as passive victims instead of agents who own their own stories, who are allowed to not just be helped, but are creating their own narratives, have a stake in whatever he is being said about them. Right? So these are the kind of questions that were very important. In the broader scope of things, a project like this is important for 3 reasons, as I told in the political ecology workshop that I conducted this morning. First, when we talk about climate violence, there is always a tendency of distancing. We know that we have a lot of information about climate violence, but when it comes to relating to it or acting on it, there is a tendency to think that it is going to happen in some time in the future, or it's going to happen to people who are not us. And therefore, the amount of information we have about climate violence doesn't really reflect on the social attitudes about it. Second, in that very process of distancing it out, what we often tend to do is dehumanize the communities within these spaces. So if you think of the Sundarbans as this forest area with the sea, which is purely wild, which is the exact opposite of a space like Kolkata or Bangalore, which are, urban civilized spaces. Sure, the Royal Bengal tiger or the crocodile are inhabitants of Sundarbans, but a lot of villages and communities in those spaces are as much stakeholders. And in calling these spaces wild, you're dehumanizing or you're just distancing these people as well. And whether you try to talk about them in very negative light, hatred, superstitions, whichever word you choose, or in these extremely positive lights of they must be so innocent, they have the rustic charm of villagers. Either way, you're otherizing. You're not considering them at par with somebody who's from Bangalore or Hyderabad or Delhi, right? And these are the nuances of it. We have a lot of facts about Sundarbans. You can see a Wikipedia entry on it. That is not the kind of conversation I was trying to have. And I felt that this is necessary for that. So I was very clear about what I want to do, what is the rationale behind it. We talk about the personal being political, why identity and space and intersectionality and this politics of representation, politics of which knowledges are more visible or normalized versus others. What kind of a role storytelling can play in all of this makes sense. What this project or the last few months of the workshops with Curating for Culture have helped with has been the direction where the outreach of this project works. So I'm an academic. I have been told by a number of people I'm meeting right now that it's so good to hear you think or talk, and it's making sense. You're putting into words a lot of things that we are thinking about. That's just my trait. I was given a kind of toolkit to work with, and it made sense to just use those ideas or tools to talk about these things. In the process, one of the things that I had to unlearn over the last few months is to not go too theoretical, is to not make it so discursive. I know the nuances. I know that I can talk about this in terms of Judith Butler or Watson and Yarrow or Gayatri Chakraborty's Spivak, and it's important. It's necessary. But the moment I want to talk about an interactive, inclusive space, a kind of archive that is crowdsourced, that is not one central institution or one academic from a relatively privileged position. I teach in one of the IITs Srinidhi mentioned just now. So it's true, right? So it shouldn't be the kind of knowledge that we are providing shouldn't be gate kept, but also the attitudes or the biases that I'm trying to problematize. I shouldn't fall back into the traps of them, right? And to do that, I came up to this project, and one of the first things I shared in our first workshop was that I want a crowdsourced archive. I want something that has community ownership and stakeholders. I don't want to say that this is the copyrighted property of Tonisha. I want people to add to stories, change stories, and in the process of talking about ghost stories, about talking about so-called unimportant things, we see the kind of attitudes, everyday life practices, concerns, problems that are experienced in daily. It doesn't stay as this frozen stereotype somewhere out there, right? And therefore, the last 6 months have been this very interesting thing where, when we write academic papers, especially in critical humanities, it's like we are arguing out a case. One of the first things that we are told is, obviously we are interested in social justice. I don't think you can be a student of humanities if you don't have some sense of, or some project, or some sense of social inequality that you want to talk about. And at the same time, we can't show our biases. We have to rationalize it out and argue it out, and at the end of it, convince the reader that we are doing something worthwhile. It is important to look at a space like this. This has been the exact opposite of that. Here, I'm not trying to put in nuanced theory. I'm not trying to say that you need to read this book or need to be aware of 50 years of history of Sundarbans across these 25 years. I'm trying to tell you that you need to have a sense of a, for the lack of a better word, an emotional response to what is happening, so that we can then talk about all the conversations that are happening. So if you have looked at my exhibit, yes, I'm talking about the tiger, but I'm talking about how the tiger is imagined across different contexts. So everything from tiger widows, people who have lost at least one male member of family in tiger attacks, in forest foraging, who are then subject to a lot of cultural stigma because they are considered unlucky or they are considered inauspicious, and they have to practically live outside society and continue going back to the forest without a permit to sustain their family. All the levels or layers of violence that are going on. If you bring in questions of queer or Dalit feminism, the question complicates further. It's not just a conversation about violence, right? Within something like this, if I want to create an inclusive community-sourced and crowd-sourced space, one of the first things that I had to create was a more interactive way of talking about this. All of us know that the Royal Bengal tiger is endangered. Most of us will agree or not along to the fact that, this is a very important forest area or water body and we need to preserve it. So most people get bored of climate conversations very quickly. Local stories, engagement with local stories and local communities has been the main focus that I've had, so that we can talk about identities in terms of conversations, right? So very quickly, if you have looked at my project, you will notice that there are a lot of questions, games, concerns. It's deliberately fragmented. I'm not trying to give you Yan with all its resolution involved. I'm just trying to show you fragments of what is happening there with one through line that basically tries to tell you that some of these are more familiar knowledges than the others, right? A big part of the criticism that came when I was working with this project with the group of people I have now known for 8 months was that, you can't go to Sundarbans and do workshops and collect stories or see how somebody is responding to a story. Tonisha, that is going to come 5 years later. You have to build this archive first of existing knowledge and then do the what is coming from the center and what is coming from the margins. Amitabh Ghosh is talking beautifully, but is talking about the Sundarbans rather than being from the Sundarbans. That is it, right? Along the way, I realized that this inclusivity and interactivity, this double life that I'm trying to play with, means that I don't, in fact, have to wait for 5 years. If I can play with interactive spaces that by being interactive automatically become inclusive, or at least are more inclusive than they were previously, then they become these tools which I can take to both a space like Kolkata and a space like Sundarbans, and the responses are going to, of course, be very different. And therefore, through the process of talking or through the process of conversing, having that conversation now, the archive can be built along with it. The archive doesn't have to be built first, followed by the conversation. And that has been that one big thing, because we don't need another Wikipedia entry or catalog of the main days in which the Royal Bengal tiger works. Or it took me 4 days of coffee and lack of sleep to build that series, because I'm just familiar enough with it. It was very easy to source that. To make that conversation a part of the archive building is what I am now interested in. And that's what I'm going to go forward. Because again, as I said, in one sense, all of this is extremely familiar knowledge. I'm sure that if I go to a kid in a school and ask them to write an essay about environmental conservation, they are going to write about how plants need to be there. So yes, everyone knows this, but how do we get that emotional response from you and make you care? That has become that central question that I'm working with now. And here the medium is so different from an academic person. So that's where I am right now. Thank you so much. And this is not the end of the conversation at our graduating ceremony. I refuse. We are going to keep talking, both individually and together. Okay. Thanks so much.
The video is there. Same. So,
Yes.
you can remove the other slides. So do you want them to quickly see the photograph?
Sure. So again, the social imagination of the tiger or a space. So the understanding is that these are objective realities. What do you mean that?
Presentation mode. You'll
Okay.
have to keep scrolling on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Just okay. So very quickly, as you can see, these are objects, material, cartoons that came out in colonial Bengal. Bon Bibi, who is worshipped by both Hindus and Muslims. A Tagore poem that came out, that is still taught in primers in Bengal till date. And that is a class, caste, toxic masculinity critique using the tiger. And local narratives from closer to Sundarbans, where it is very common to do something like this, where this exoticizing or treating the tiger as practically an alien doesn't, because you can't. So all these discussions or differences are some of the themes that I'm working on. Here I'm focusing for this presentation and this exhibition. Of course, I chose the tiger because talking about everything would make it very generic. But of course, the broader project looks at core stories, laws, local practices, and is trying to create an ecology.
My archive is actually a website. So I'll just let you look at the website for maybe 2 minutes. It's a video of less than 5 minutes. And then I'll talk about it, just so that you have seen the archive.
No voice, right?
No, sir. So I'll play the rest of the video later on at the end after I finish giving you an overview. But this was basically it. Giving you a tour of the website and the different pages associated with that. So let me begin with a disclaimer. My project called Parmanand Ghanshyamdas Private Sindhi Library is actually a failed project. Let me explain why. I had set out to collect narratives of a lost literature. I had aimed to talk to readers of Sindhi literature in India. I wanted to ask them what they remember of this literature, who the important writers were, what they wrote about, and so on. I had a vision that I'll write an alternative literary history of the making of Sindhi literature in India, which could perhaps become a model for literary history in general. My role was not that of a literary historian listing the most important authors and their works. My role was that of an archivist digging into the readers' minds, asking them to recall the beautiful things that they had read. After all, the essence of a literature does not emerge in a work of literary history, which might only be encyclopedic at its best. The essence of a literature stands out in what its readers make of it. For me, the reader's perspective was very important because I thought there is plenty of information available on important Sindhi writers. But as I began to learn, Sindhi writers are easy to find, but Sindhi readers are not easy to find. And that experience of looking for extinct readers brought me face to face with the reality of the impact of the partition of India on Sindhi community. Because Sindh was not divided, Sindhis could not call a piece of land as home. The linguistic reorganization of states in India further accentuated their homelessness. And because as a community, Sindhis were scattered all over India, or at least in the western parts of the country, the readership of Sindhi literature was also scattered. Therefore, the books have been scattered as well. The project I present today constitutes the collection of the private library of late Sri Parmanand Ghanshyamdas. He was a maths tutor based in Mumbai. When his daughters got to know that I have an interest in Sindhi literature, they were happy to hand over his books to me. My project is a digitized archive of these books. It's a website I seek to continue to develop with annotations, especially by opening it up to visitors to the website to annotate the books that they are familiar with. So what I could not achieve in terms of connecting with readers, I hope to do so through this website. If the website gets discovered by Sindhi readers all around the world, they would find an option to annotate the works that they have read. I will be glad that the project would bring the readers of Sindhi literature together in some way, towards the intention that I could not fulfill earlier. To give you a brief description of the project, let me say that there are 150 books, most of them written in the Perso-Arabic script and a handful in the Devanagari script. The collection has predominantly fiction, short stories on the whole, and novels. A lot of them are translations as well. Victor Hugo's La Miserable is what is there on the table. There is Hamlet, which is not there on the table, it's somewhere else, Shakespeare's Hamlet. There are a few literary magazines, but the most intriguing category is the category of the unknown. These are books that do not have the front matter. The books are fascinating documents of their era. They carry ads for Sindhi businesses and, most importantly, ads for other Sindhi books and appeals to support Sindhi literature. And most importantly, they are a testimony to the making of Sindhi literature as an Indian literature, which is also my research interest. How did Sindhis become Indian citizens? And how did Sindhi literature become an Indian literary tradition, interacting with other Indian languages? The project is also an occasion to look at the challenges of archiving Indian languages. The right to left writing, the back to front angle or flow, the challenges of OCR capturing, and so on. This is a beginning. Let's see how else this can grow as a community resource. Thank you.
Now, thank you so much, all of you, for these amazing presentations. Do you stop sharing screen yet? as he had said, so now this is time for us to have a conversation about what you heard, what it triggered, what you felt. It's not so much of an academic panel discussion, not for Saturdays and the evening, definitely. I think we can also turn to people on the other side. So, Nupur, do you want to start? And then we can hear more from this side of the room. Nupur, are you able to hear me? Listen to me. I'm going to leave a message to Nupur, and in the meanwhile, Om Prakash and Ms. Shaija, if you guys want to share your thoughts. Yes. I think this is a better mic right now. Or if you want to hold this, I can give you this. We tried something, but it's not going the best. Yeah.
I connect with Soni through my digital archiving activities. Since 2005, I've been trying to digitize whatever I can in Canada. That's how I started my journey. And in 2018, I happened to find a scanner built by Internet Archive in Indian Academy of Sciences campus. So I was talking to Carl Malamud from Public Resource US while he was on his regular trip to Bangalore. He was trying to buy a lot of books and back to US and I had to had a chance to meet him and explain what I wanted to do archival digitization of literature. How I wanted to go back, already create a structure of time machine, see how the words in my language evolved over a period of time. So that's why I created schools for Kannada, and we are also trying to create an index for Kannada books. I searched in various places to see if I can find all the authors who actually wrote various books for us. We used to find in our textbooks, etc. But I didn't really get a complete index. So I started working on that, and later I found that no, we really don't have such index, and we should be creating one ourselves. So that's how my community activities started expanding towards linguistic technology development for Kannada through my initiatives such as Sanchaya and Sanchi Foundation. We archive art, history, culture, literature in various different forms, audiovisual format, digital format. We try to use open source technologies to build metadata and data sets for various subjects. And while working, after having met Carl, I found that there is a scanner, the state-of-art scanner from Internet Archive lying in Bangalore, not being used by the institute. And I immediately had a thought, okay, I have a lot of old Kannada books. What do I do with them? Can I actually get it digitized through this? He said, please go ahead. And he actually put me in touch with Academy, and we were able to go there and find a 6x6 place to set up the scanner ourselves and started using that scanner. And I said, okay, fine, I can actually do this during the weekends, but I want to sustain this, right? So I want to do it for a lot of other languages also. We started working on Malayalam and Telugu, Tamil books, and we immediately started finding people interested in digitizing a lot of books, and not only books but also manuscripts. Later, it turned out to be palm leaf manuscripts. Now we actually work on those things as well. So in last 4 or 5 years, we have digitized more than 37,000 books in 14 languages, and we are continuing to do so, and at the rate of 12 lakh pages per month. So last year alone, we digitized almost 1 crore pages, along with the project that we did in the National Law School to give access to the literature, law literature to digitally, visually challenged students, as well as professors and researchers. So in 2018, when we really wanted to make this particular project a community project, that's when I found Sindhi books from Soni. I had never met her before, and I happened to meet her only this year. couple of times. And before that, I got these box, this specific box from I think Tanvir. He sent the books to us and he said, okay, why don't you scan these books? I said, okay, fine, I'll scan the books for you, but who will tell me the titles of the books? What do we do with that? I don't understand anything about it. And by during that time, we didn't have the technology support also to read the book names. Okay, today, if you upload any book to Internet Archive, you can easily get your book OCR, optical character recognition. There is a technology name which actually extracts the text from the image and gives it to you in editable text format in more than 140 languages. That didn't exist before 2018. Okay, because during that time we are just experimenting how we can actually use the technology to extract text from these images. And later we found that okay, it can be done. Google Vision API was already doing, and 2016 itself had figured that Tesseract was doing a wonderful job for almost 140 plus languages. So we did some experiments with Digital Library of India collection that we had pushed into Internet Archive with local language metadata, majorly for Kannada, Telugu, and a couple of other languages. And we found wonderful results. We started extracting text or we started finding very old data just by text search on Internet Archive collections that we created. And we slowly started expanding to various other languages. We work with Vishwa Konkani Center to digitize Konkani works, and later Tulu, and various other languages have started coming up. We have Odia right now. So here now, when you look at Sindhi collection, now the conversation continued. We wanted to see if it can be like made little better, like made more accessible. So now we are in the phase wherein we are trying to see if we can extend some more support for the Sindhi archive, possibly do better with the OCR, see if we can create some fonts which can actually identify the text characters which are not actually found. We recently did such experiment with Kannada. We created a Kittle font to beautifully extract the text from Kittle's old books. Okay, so we are in the process of making it possible for a lot of other languages. And later we said, okay, why don't we actually create a simple archive wherein people can go through these books and start annotating, start writing comments, start collaborating back with the archivists, right? So those are the other things. And Soni comes back with few more very difficult tasks for us, right? So she wants us to have transliteration possibility. Okay, can you actually like get that converted, translated, and can you have an interface with for somebody who can actually do the translation to a different language? Yes, it's all possible. There are a lot of open source tools that we have explored, which I used to use for Kannada. Now it is being extended to other languages. And thank you for the opportunity for having those books on our collections. And it actually gives us a larger challenge to continue to work on such treasures.
Thank you so much. I think this is an excellent example of the collaborations that we all have been talking about and which should spew on from here. So it's just the starting, as Tonisha said. Nupur, are you able to hear us now, and do you want to add your thoughts?
Yes, I'm able to hear you now. I'm sorry, the audio has been really patchy from Bangalore to way, but I'm sorry if I've missed parts of it. But yeah, from what I've heard through the patchy audio, this is a fascinating project, and every one of you have done some amazing work in in the subjects that you have pursued. I just wanted to say that as a journalist, we document, we chronicle our times, which then later on, in the present times, it's chronicling the times, but later on, this becomes an archive, if you look at it in that context. As a documentary filmmaker, we focus on issues which are again stories of our present times, of our communities. And again, in history, when the film is there in the archive, it becomes a document of those times, the past, present, future. of our communities, our people. And so, I mean, taking off from that, you can imagine how close any archival project could possibly be to my own heart. And talking about possibilities, each one of you have talked about new interpretations, looking at things, whether it is digging into your grandmother's or grandfather's trunk, or looking at, how your grandmom is going to sing her anthem, what she remembers of her national anthem singing in school, or the Royal Bengal tiger and its interpretations. And just listening to the stories, I was thinking, as you were speaking, that, yeah, what you're trying to do is bursting myths, bursting stereotypes, bursting biases. We want to look at things from the eyes and perspectives of people, of communities, and especially for the Sundarban tiger, as a Bengali coming from Bengal originally. I was and a student of literature, no, I was so reminded in the interpretations that the archivist was talking about of William Blake's poem, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright in the Forests of the Night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? I can't tell you how many interpretations we have done in our MA in Delhi University while we studied Blake. So I'm just saying that everything that you all are saying has touched me, and I feel that you are on the right path, if I may. I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm some great archivist. I'm just saying that this is something we all really ought to be doing. And with all of you doing that kind of work, it's really, really encouraging. And the archiving of the last speaker, I could hear again the number of books that you people have digitized, archived in different languages. I mean, this is what we need to do. This is our archives in India are being destroyed in many spheres. We have very bad neglect of archival material. As we build archives, as you people build archives, you also have to ensure that it is kept safe, that it is kept safe for future generations. We'll all be gone, but who is going to access this? Who's going to access these stories? How will they access it? So really, I mean, just from the top of my head, from what I could hear through the patchy audio, I'm really encouraged by the work all of you are doing. And yeah, these are some of my responses. I don't know if it made sense, but yeah, I just, off the top of my head, your presentations. If you have anything specific to ask me, I'd be happy to answer that in terms of any project you haven't heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Nupur. I'm sure we'll come back to you with a question or two. At least I have, if nobody else. And so yeah, I'll come back to you. But thank you for these responses. We'll listen to one more response. Shailja, do you want to take over? This is okay. Or you could stand next to her only. This is the same mic. Or you could stand.
Yeah. So she'll speak in Kannada and I'll translate.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ, ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಶೈಲಜಾ BS. ನಾನು ಹಳ್ಳಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪಟ್ಟಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಶಿಲ್ಪಾದ್ರಾವ್ ಮಗಳು. ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ನನ್ನ ಜರ್ನಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಓದೋದ್ಕಿಂತ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ನಾಲೆಡ್ಜ್ ನಮಗೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೊಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ತು ನಮಗೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ 10th ತನಕ ಹಳ್ಳಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ ಮುಗಿಸು. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸಿಟಿಗೆ ಬಂದೆ.
It's not audible. ಅಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಬಾ, ಮೈಕ್ ಫುಲ್ ಹತ್ರ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಇನ್ನೂ ಹತ್ರ. ಹಾ.
ಸಿಟಿಗೆ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು ಅದು ಒಂದು ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಿದ್ದಾಗಲೇ ಟೈಲರಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗ್ತೀನಿ, ಬ್ಯಾರಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗ್ತೀನಿ. ಟೈಪಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್. ನಮ್ಮ ಫಾದರು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ರೈಟರ್. ಸೊ ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷು ಟೈಪಿಂಗ್ಗೆ ಒಬ್ರು ಟೈಪಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು. ನಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಕಲಿಬೇಕು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಮನೆ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಂದೇ ಇತ್ತು. ಅಮ್ಮ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೆಲ್ತ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂಸ್. ಆದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಕ್ಲಾಸು ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮು ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ನನ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಷ್ಟ. ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ
ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. So she was raised in a village, and then she was extremely interested in learning, but the opportunities were limited. Oh, okay. So she was raised in a village, and then she was very what is that, struggling there because there weren't any opportunities. So the moment she got to migrate to the city and come here, she was like, like within her eyes it was visible how excited she was about typing. It seems there is English, it seems there is so many of these new candies in the store that she can learn from. And then she also she had house responsibilities, but then she also wanted to learn, and then she started attending those classes. Alla typing then agittu il bandmele enaಯ್ತು ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಹೇಳು. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫೇಲ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಪಾಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೇ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಅದೇ ಹೇಳಿ. ಹಾ,
ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನಾನು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡಾಗ ಜೂನಿಯರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೊಂಡೆ. ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅವರು ಪೇಪರ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನಂದು ಮಿಷನ್ ಕೆಟ್ಟೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನ ಸರಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಮಾರು 10 to 15 minutes ಆಯ್ತು. ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅದಿರೋದೇ 15 minutes. ಸೊ ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರೇನ್ ಚಾನ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮು ಫೇಲ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾನು ಚಾಲೆಂಜರ್ ತಗೊಂಡು ಮತ್ತೆ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮು ಮೆರಿಟ್ ಪಾಸ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಸೀನಿಯರು ಸೇಮ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್. ಸೀನಿಯರ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾನು ತಗೊಳಕ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಓದೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಿಕಾಮ್ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮ್ಯಾರೇಜ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು ಆಸೆ. ಇವನಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವ್ದಕ್ಕಾದ್ರೂ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ 2 ವರ್ಷದ ಮುಗಿದ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಗೆ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ಆದೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಗ್ರಾಮರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವನು ಟೀಚ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಕಲಿಬೇಕು. ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸು.
So she was extremely translate ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಅರ್ಧ. So she was in the village, I mean in her village, and then she had a bad luck episode where the typewriter broke down, and because the typewriter broke down, she was initially not able to work, and then she failed the exam. And if you come see the archive, you will see that all the people there have largely failed, and all the women are sitting on the floor, and you have to identify her there. And it's crazy because even though she's failed it, they have framed her and kept her somehow, and then she doesn't lose her interest. And then now she's back in the city. She's like, okay, I'll have children, and then I need to now make for a living, and then I'll now start doing that. ಮತ್ತೆ ಎಕ್ಸಿಬಿಷನ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಂಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ.
ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯ್ತು. ಈ ತರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಏನೋ ನಾನು ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ನನಗೊಂದು ಇಷ್ಟ ಫೋಟೋಸ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಸರ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಟ್ಸ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ತಗೋತಾ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ, ನನಗೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಇಷ್ಟವಾದ ಕೆಲಸ.
She's telling she just loves collecting. So anything like photos and anything she has, she just wants to keep collecting, and she never knew that any of that would ever have any value. So the moment she ended up seeing that, okay, all this also can be exhibited or seen, suddenly she found that newfound interest. And to add to it, they both became childlike enthusiastic. My mom and granny and are like, that is also there, this is also there, go get it. And she's actually allergic. But despite that, she's like, okay, I'll go and I'll scavenge. And I was also surprised that she had such a trove of material, because she was not knowing that one day it will be exhibited or there are archivists or anything, but she just wanted it. And
ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಅದು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದು ನನಗೆ ಅದು ತುಂಬಾ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪಿರೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಈಗ ಅವನು ಅದನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೊತಾ ಇರೋದು, ಅದರಿಂದ ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ, ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ.
So the fact that it is like helping me and helping others to gauge the whole the histories of it, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised that all of this became of useful, and that is giving me a lot of happiness that it is of use and people are able to see it and appreciate it and go through those histories. Okay. Yeah. Both of us love talking, as you can see, so that's why I'm like, yeah, thanks. You have time? Okay, no, I was like responding. No, I was like, Ajjidu tailoring kate.
ಅವರು ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಕಲಿಯೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಷ್ಟ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮದ್ವೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಪಾಪ ಏನೋ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್, ಅವ್ರ ತಾಯಿ ಇದ್ರೆ, ಅವ್ರ ಚಿಕ್ಕಮ್ಮ ಅವ್ರ ಅರ್ಚರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಏನೂ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅವರು ಕೊಬ್ಬರಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದಂತೆ, knitting ಮಾಡೋದು, ಟೈಲರಿಂಗ್ ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಟೈಲರಿಂಗ್ ಟೀಚರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ನಡೆಸಿ ₹3 ಫೀಸ್ ತಗೊಂಡು ಫ್ರೀಯಾ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ನಡೆಸಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗು ಸ್ಟಿಚ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ರಿಲೇಟಿವ್ಸ್ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಗೆ, ಯಾರು ಪೂರ್ ಪೀಪಲ್, ಲೇಡಿ ಪೀಪಲ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗು ಬ್ಲೌಸ್ ಹೊಲ್ಕೊಡೋದು ಖುಷಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ.
So my mom, ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಒಂದು ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ. So basically what happened is my granny was like tortured by her stepmother, and then she could not have access to a lot of resources, and then when she migrated to the city, she also finds this candy in the tailoring machine, and then she starts learning it. She puts it in a chit fund, and then she starts making basic money, because like I told, my grandfather wasn't giving her money and agency. So then it eventually she starts charging ₹3 for all of that, and from the money that she's making, she's sustaining her own household while also giving to the poor and needy people who don't have access to those clothes. She would I think that's what the story she was telling, or the grandfather's uniform clothes, she was using that to make those chaddis, story that I told about, and knitting and sewing. So they were making these coconut toys also, where if you see in these marriages, they make with that, and then these gollu or these bombay that you see in Navratri. So she was doing all sorts of work like that.
ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ರಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಯೂನಿಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಕ್ಲಾತ್ಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಇರತ್ತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಾರ್ಗು ಅವ್ರು ಯೂಸ್ ಬರೋ ಹಂಗೇನೆ ಇವರು ಹೊಲ್ಕೊಡೋದು ಯೂನಿಫಾರ್ಮ್. ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ನಂದು ಅದೇ ಮೆಂಟಾಲಿಟಿ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮಿಬ್ಬರ ಕಾಂಬಿನೇಷನ್ ಇವನಿಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಯೂಸ್ ಆಯ್ತು, ಅದು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವಾಗ ನಂಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ ಮದರ್ ಇಂದ 90 years ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕಲಿಯೋ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಈಗ ನಾನ್ ಸಾನ್ಸ್ಕ್ರಿಟ್ ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಕಲಿತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಕುಕಿಂಗ್ ನನ್ಗದು ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗತ್ತೆ, ಕಲಿತಾ ಡೈಲಿ ನಾನು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಅವರು ಸಾನ್ಸ್ಕ್ರಿಟ್ ಡೈಲಿ ಶ್ಲೋಕ ಹೇಳೋದು, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಟಾಕ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಸಾನ್ಸ್ಕ್ರಿಟ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಅವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆರಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಡೇನು ಅವರು ಹಾಫ್ ಅನ್ ಅವರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಟೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಅದು ಇವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ.
Yeah, so that is her, she actually was instrumental in getting Granny back again at 90, getting over her second stroke and so on. And it's kind of interesting how she used her Sanskrit mantras and all of that in her speech therapy. And then she can see that her, mother-in-law seeing that inspired her to do it. And them doing it has inspired me to do it. And she's able to see that it is scaling up and doing work. And she's kind of feeling very happy to see that despite all of that trauma being there, even on her last day also, she was able to actually hold that space and attend that class. And in fact, that was one thing, she was like, she didn't want to share it. And it's her story. She wanted to share that grief. I didn't complete the whole thing, right? So now that she's told, I'll just add a little to that. So what happened next is Granny was in the first exhibition. She inaugurated it and all of that. And by the time the second exhibition that came up in Bangalore International Center, in my arms while she was singing, she had passed away. And the archiving process completely changed by then, because I now had to archive someone who isn't there. And how do I deal with this trauma and grief? And this entire process of archiving wasn't just celebratory for us or inward looking for us, but both of us could actually collectively grieve through this process while at it. So I really want to thank it was so therapeutic to work through the archive. And that's the other installation which you will see inside, which is this, her last shroud that she wore. She had stitched it and she had made the shroud and wearing it for 20 years. And it is in that shroud that she passed away. But she is not there physically in it, but a lot of objects that I had a lot of affinity to are also not there anymore. So most of us in Indian families don't have archives to show. And whose archives are we documenting? And those of us who don't have those archives, those oral histories and stories and memories of those artifacts are there. So when you open the shroud and go, she's not physically there. Those objects are not physically there, but she still is in that shroud as long as I'm there, and all of us who relate to it are there. And those stories are also there inside that shroud. So that's how over the 3 different exhibitions, it has completely evolved from her being there, then grieving with her, and now this installation of the shroud to go through the archives of absence, including her own absence. So the whole cycle of CPA kind of came through like that. Yeah. So I just wanted to complete that story because she also spoke about it. Yeah.
Thank you for all 3 responses, the invited ones. But now the floor is open
what others are thinking, what did it trigger. I mean, I can obviously build conversations around what's said, but it'd be nice to listen to everyone. We'll keep the audience out of, yes, Aparna, please. Only thing is, everyone just be comfortable coming here because this mic is the most audible one. So, and we're all just, it's all family at home. So, yeah, come here.
Okay, first, a big thank you to all the amazing speakers. It's just opened the floodgates, so to speak. Tonisha, to begin with you, since you were among the early ones, I just loved how you have, against the backdrop of the Sundarbans, essentially, if you look at it, it's not actually about the tiger, but it can be about so many other things, so many spin-offs. It's almost like a tiger's metaphorical. So I also wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned where you said that there are intersections with certain other things thematically, like gender, Dalit, queer, feminism. So would you like to throw some light on that? I'm sorry if you've already mentioned it and I didn't pick it up. So that was something I want to ask.
Yes. It's like the exact opposite of telephones, right? Everyone has to come and talk to the.
No, this is the old telephone.
Yes. So, my work has looked at identity. That is the keyword that we keep using. And the moment you think of identity, any identity, you will, I think, agree with me that there is a sense of similarities and differences. That's how any identity is created in our lives. We define ourselves against what we are not, or in terms of what we relate to. Right? And while that is important, and while words like initially there was the civil rights movement, and then Marxism and feminism came and took everything over. One of the things that I tell people a lot is that while we think of modern identities as very fragmented, there is the work self, there is the self with our best friend, you don't need to be a theorist for it, right? But at the same time, they are always working at intersections. The moment the word identity politics comes in, it becomes this very polarizing thing. Where somebody, for instance, I know that for the last few years, I have been struggling very hard to be a practicing Hindu. Because the entire political climate and everything has been getting increasingly very polarizing, and to hold on to that thing. 2 days back, I had to tell somebody who's a very good friend of mine that my God is a very queer God. And that was important, right? So whenever we talk of identities, yes, the similarities and differences make sense. Yes, specific words like class or gender or caste or sexuality, they make sense. But in our lived realities, we are always at intersections of these. When you look at me, you don't purely see only a woman. You see somebody who is talking in English. You see somebody who is clearly not conversant in Kannada, because I'm sure I missed out a lot on aunties. Other details that Srinidhi did not see. Right? So
added color to it.
Yes.
Yes.
So all these words are important, but whenever we are looking at any context or any lived experience, it's always important to hold that intersection. So for instance, to go back to that example, yes, Sundarbans. Somebody assumed that I'm an ecologist. I'm not. I'm faking my way through it. So, but think of how most people will not talk about queerness and Sundarbans. Everyone will think of Sundarbans in terms of wildlife and forest and poor people. What is happening to the trans or queer child who is growing there, who doesn't have a vocabulary or has a very local folk vocabulary to draw comfort from? And we need to talk about this, right? That's the way in which I'm trying to make sense. Also, the other word that comes, because identity politics is increasingly becoming this very fraught word. People love and hate each other on terms of it. this one person who once said this very useful thing, that these identity tags or labels that we have, these are not possessions. They are not material possessions in the way in which we understand ownership. But these are ways of making somebody feel dispossessed. That is where the crisis or the fault line comes. In a space where everyone is being able to share their thought coming from multiple neurodivergent, queer, feminist, class, caste intersections, it's not a problem. But the moment that fault line becomes this point of discrimination or violence, often a very insidious or symbolic kind of violence, we need to draw attention to it. So one of the things that I tell is that feminism isn't saying that women are superior to men. Feminism is about trying to problematize existing normalized systems of discrimination. So feminism is Dalit, queer, sexual, everything that comes under it as a practice. So that's how the discussion on identity happens in my head, if that helps.
Yes. So it is, so that and Sundarbans are mutually exclusive. It's not that one is a bad.
Absolutely not. As I said, so I was just telling Srinidhi about this. Sappho for Equality, which was one of the first queer organizations in India. They make films and try to historicize projects, and I'm a part of a project on period talk. And when these projects come about, you expect sad stories because there is a lot of homophobia, there's a lot of gender discrimination in healthcare. They often have intersections, overlaps. Think about a trans person's experience of menstruation and how dysphoric that is, right? Situations like that. But the moment you start opening them up as archives and start collecting stories, I was hoping that that is not the only story you get. Or in a situation where there is so much cultural stigma about something like menstruation, for instance, the fact that my brother understands when I say PMS, in a situation where I was not allowed to tell my father or utter the word period in front of my father, how much we have come there. That means something. So when it comes to the Sundarbans, the focus is exactly on saying that wildlife or tigers is or should not be the only things that you see. I mentioned tiger widows in my poster. So gender, class, caste, an entire body of literature that is choosing to identify itself as Dalit literature. It is working at all these intersections and we need to look at them. We can't say that the wildlife part of it is completely divorced from, say, the queer conversation, right? We need to look at how all of these inform each other. So yes, it is definitely not a separate project. It's completely there.
Yes, please.
I have a question to Srinidhi in particular and the other speakers as well. And this question comes as a fellow Savarna. How do you thread the thin line of balance between celebrating one's ancestral history and as a Savarna also holding a space of reparation and the feeling of guilt that one needs to hold as a Savarna for the bed of atrocities that it probably is based on? So, Srinidhi wants to be honest. Yeah, I think it's very difficult to navigate, which is why most of the archives, the prompts are about firstly just owning up the privilege. I have a very close black friend, Bangui, who told me once when I asked her, "What do you do?" And then she's like, "That's a very privileged question to answer." There are a lot of people who don't have jobs. There are a lot of people who are having a lot of mental health issues. Instead, you can ask them, "What's your story?" And instead, you can ask them the privilege, what your privileges are. So when I come up and I'm like, "Oh, I'm the CEO, I'm this, that, I'm not telling you that I had these 4 ancestors behind me, all of who were in these big tech institutions. To have a great grandfather who worked with the Maharaja of Mysore is very different than somebody whose entire community is now learning for the first time because of ours and so on. So to kind of own up to that sense of privilege is a lot of act of first sense of doing it, I think, while also giving that care required, because at the end of the day, everybody, grandmother, every one of us has profession. All of us have mental health issues. All of us have loved ones dying, so we have grief. All of us have anxieties. All of us have some form of oppression coming to us in some form. So when I look at those, I'm looking at the individual's suffering, which is as valid. The richest person on earth also has his individual suffering. Elon Musk's daughter, Elon Musk's trans daughter, disowned him because he did not approve of the transness of the daughter. And losing a daughter is a lot, whether he approves of it or not, or he's dealing with that mental health issue. I don't, everybody has individual suffering. But systemic violence is very, very different. And systemic issues of caste, systemic issues of that, I think, as Savarna first, we need to own up. Secondly, we need to pass on the mic, really ensure that a lot of our work is not just because at the end of the day, here at Gurkha, I know that most of us who are going to come are Savarna, which is why all the prompts I've written are, in a sense, asking the person to reflect and see. And that can work very beautifully. To give you an example of CPA earlier, largely we work with non-Savarna students in the organization that we work with. So at CPA last time, I was supposed to conduct a workshop for purely rich privileged children. And I was like, how do I take this? And what transpired was very powerful. There was this white English man who I had met in a workshop who was dealing with a lot of migrants, Ukrainian to Sudanese to all of them. And I was like, how do you now navigate this as a white teacher with predominantly white children? And he said, you know what? Children are not enough yet. They can be worked with. And he said, if you tell them that there is this problem, they're going to get it. And I tried it at a place in Berlin. I tried it again here. And with those children, I created the same conservancy story. And I, in the end, explained to them what manual scavenging was. And I asked them, this happens due to caste and you don't have to do this. Do you think that's okay? And all of our ancestors were okay with it. Are you? And the children vehemently said no. And some of them even teared up. And one of them, in fact, just banged the table and said, this is wrong. How can this happen? Right? So I think as Savarnas, we need to do that labor of love, which even Sachin tells a lot. And it's a beautiful word that is coined, or labor of love, because how much do we ask the oppressor caste folks to do that? Enough of them have created that education. So one step at a time, with a lot of patience and care, if we educate and work with people, I think we can get people to change it, because I was also casteist, I was also a lot of these labels, and I could change it. I could, a lot of other people also I think can. So I think that's the important lens from which we put up our shows, work with these archives.
Yeah, good answer.
One more question for you. You have very beautifully brought out your grandmother, though she is not there, through the shroud which you picked from the burial ground. And then you made a closed enclosure showing her things through memory. Now, in the Indian context, many of the people have only memories. They may not have things to tell or this thing. But memories over a period of time get fragmented, or they get distorted, or it gets broken to bits. Then how do you account for the authenticity if you want to document those memories?
Just repeat this question on the mic for the web audience.
Yeah, Itana was asking about Granny Shroud, which came from crematorium. I could put up a lot of her stories inside it, which were largely through, hearing those stories. And a lot of people lose their objects and stories, and they change and they morph. And how do you establish its authenticity? I don't think you need to, because at the end of the day, as historians, let's say, I need to know when we won the freedom in India, 1947. But my history or how I look at it can be very different from the way you look at it. And we need to, like I was on a discussion with Tonisha earlier, those binaries of this is true and this is false doesn't always apply to you. A lot of us look at very different lenses. Somebody who has, like, I'm neurodivergent in an ADHD way, right? But for me, I can still be not at all understanding of somebody who's autistic or has this. And I'm like, this happened where I said, this happened in a place where it was like, this is so neurodivergent, unfriendly, because everything is orderly and you have to come on time and people are so particular. And they're like, you have to realize it's neurodivergent friendly for people to have a And I'm like, oh wow. So I didn't even think of the other person. So what is my truth need not necessarily be the other's truth. So I think sometimes, especially with personal histories, especially of the oppressed folks, I think we can take the face value. So, and sometimes people hide some bits, which is why I said it's okay for my grandma, for my mom to not want to tell certain things. I would not want that of the government, or I would not want that of a public institution. We want right to information, but that's not true of personal histories. The ones that are forgotten probably have the right to be forgotten. It's okay for them to say, like, you know, we were discussing about the Marijapi massacre or many other massacres. People want to move on from their trauma and be like, it's not needed. So I think histories have their course and how they work with it, and it's okay to let them be that. But most of the history spaces are taken as up by privileged people. So we need to document these oral histories very, very powerfully. We need to really ensure that the mic goes to them so that they can document their own histories. They can get the grants, they can get the PhDs, they can, you know, be the Ambedkar with 20 degrees next to their name, where they are the ones who are the custodians and doers of their own research than becoming the objects or subjects of that research. So I think that is also very important for these forgotten histories. A lot of them are marginalized histories that are pushed to be forgotten because nobody cares. And I think that, which is why I think I'll just end with this, which is what happened. You know, I was like, yesterday when the Grammy sewing machine was being brought here, the person who was bringing it, the Tata Ace driver, asked, why are you taking the sewing machine and what's going on? And our chef, Vijay, told the story of the sewing machine, and he bowed down and touched the feet of the sewing machine. How many of us have seen that come here? And all of us are fascinated. Everybody feel like, oh, my granny is there. I've seen that in this. I was so like, I don't know if I have also not used that. I have not been a working class person. I really like, how would a working class person look at another working class person's archive is so crazy. Like, so he came and Vijay was like, walking through the whole show, he's interested. And he went through the whole show and his intersections and his views of what that is. Yana Ma'am's intersection, we were at the stamp exhibition recently, and you should have heard, and I mean, I would, if there is time, she can tell you what she told me. It was crazy, the kind of every stamp she's telling, such beautiful, 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 you know, narratives. We would never know those stories. Those are all not there. And I have them, and I think we should pass that on.
I just wanted to go back to on the screen, and Nupur, I think this question was there, and then I'm bringing it back to you. Nupur, are you able to hear me? I just want to check before I see. Yes.
Yes,
So
yes, I'm able to hear you. My sister's
insisting that I bring
came
this
in and
question
was
is
saying,
like,
yeah, yeah. Sorry. No, yeah, I'm sorry I have to leave in a bit, but so picked up from all of you and what I understand of archiving. It's all about giving, and this is what we've been discussing for the last almost 2 hours. It's all about giving, you know, the kind of agency to stories, lives that were silent. For whatever reason, patriarchy, sexism, majority, casteism, racism, it's about filling the absences. It's about the shroud. Said in such a beautiful manner, explained in such a beautiful installation, you know, by one of the participants. And I would really love to see. Archiving is about recognizing that elephant in the room, which has not been recognized. And
so,
also, I just wanted to.
I'm interrupting you because there is a lag at your end. I actually want to ask you about this elephant missing gap or elephant in the room. And I was holding on to this question, and I'm insistent on asking it because of the atmosphere in the room. Why is there, which I read, a gap in journalism and what we read in archives? Why do you think that journalism chooses to unsee? Whether it was then, whether it is now, it seems like a different school of thought. Because when we say histories are living, when we say so many oppressed stories or unsung stories are being left out, it seems that it's being left out again and again and again. So I know I'm putting my bias out there, but I just wanted to know from you as a
No, but you see, it's absolutely, you're right in asking me the question on journalism because I'm a journalist. But what I'm saying is society has conspired to silence these stories, right? It's a part of that society. Media is a part. Okay, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. No, so media is a part of that society and is part of those biases. I'll just tell you a very small story. You know, my sister Shabani, she wrote this book called Victoria and Abdul. And it's just because you asked me this question, it's just come to mind, and I'm not, talking about her book, but just to say that for years and years, the friendship between Queen Victoria and her Munshi, Indian cook Abdul, was just completely pushed under the carpet till she went into the archives, looked at all the histories, and after 3 years of research, found that this relationship between the Queen and Abdul, this Indian man, was so authentic in years. But the British media, the British historians simply would not tell this story. And of course, I mean, it became an iconic Hollywood film as well. So I'm just telling you that everyone in their part conspires to silence. And that is why the project that you people have embarked on is so important, because more people working on archives and ensuring that the archives that you make is actually saved, and our own archives, whatever we have, is not destroyed, is so important.
Right. Thank you so much, Nupur, for answering that. I think what you said earlier really resonates. I mean, makes sense. It's the society which is created the media as well, as much as it is creating the archives. I think I was burning with this question. I had to ask it. I don't know if it connects more. Thank you so much. With this, I would want to call first evening of CPA Public Showcase a close. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us on a Saturday until late in the evening. I'm sure you could have done more fun things as well. I forgot for us to thank Amal, who has been at the back end doing all the tech things, and we really need to open up that hand. Can I request Srinidhi to please come and thank your mom and our respondent, Ms. Shailaja, please. And Nupur, I think I will have to thank you when you come back to Bangalore. Ma'am, if you could just come ahead. The brand.
You're all in the giant EDs, so that's why we have the archives.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming and sharing your help. And Soni, if you could do the same honors and thank Mr. Om Shri Prakash on behalf of all of us. This one? Yes. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone who is also online. We hope you were able to hear and find the session enriching. See you all tomorrow. Yes. The exhibition is open from 12. Sessions will start from 11:30 and will be on till 8. Let's continue the celebrations. Thank you. Good evening. Bye.